Have you ever felt the presence of someone who didn't need to say a single word to be unforgettable? Have you ever stood before a woman who, with mere silence, changed the temperature of the room, stirred something ancient within you, perhaps even forgotten echoes of your own soul? What is it about this type of woman that makes the male unconscious tremble, awaken, yield, even without understanding why? Perhaps what attracts you isn't beauty, nor charm, but something much more ancient. Something your reason doesn't recognize, but your shadow does. We live in a world addicted to noise, but it is in silence that the deepest voices speak. And some women, rare as symbols lost in ancient manuscripts, know exactly how to touch this silence. They don't seduce with words. They invoke. They are like living archetypes, crossing your mind without asking permission, activating memories that don't belong to you, but that possess you. And the question that hangs in the air isn't who they are, but why they affect you so much, without even trying. You may believe you've already understood what attracts you, what moves you, what makes you desire. But what have you never noticed? What hides behind that calm gaze? The absence of words? The presence that cannot be explained? The woman who captivates you without promising, without asking, without imploring. She's not playing games. She's mirroring. And if this scares or fascinates you, it's because you sense it. There's something inside you that responds to her, even when you pretend not to hear. Marie-Louise von Franz said that the collective unconscious is a field where everything that has been experienced still pulses. So, what do these women know, or embody, that awakens such power over you? They don't come to teach, they come to reveal. They don't come to complete, they come to confront. They are enigmas with the scent of truth, fragments of the primordial feminine that your soul recognizes, even when your mind denies it. And if you think you can simply watch this video and remain the same, prepare to be shattered. Before you dive into this experience, which isn't about women, but about what they reveal in you, subscribe to this channel. Because what you'll discover here isn't content to consume, it's truth to remember. And if you don't participate, you'll continue living on the surface, thinking you understand the game, when, in fact, it's always been just a play. She doesn't speak, but something in her moves as if carrying 1,000 voices that have never been heard. She walks as if dancing with time, as if each step were a silent prayer, written with her feet on the ground and her soul in the heavens. Her body doesn't seduce, it whispers. There's a symphony in the way she reaches out to touch an object, as if the world around her responds to her presence with reverence. And even if he doesn't understand, something inside him bends, stills, leans in to observe. Because her movement isn't physical. It's symbolic. It translates a language the man has forgotten, but his subconscious still understands. And why does this touch him so deeply? Because the masculine has been taught to fear what it cannot control. It has been educated to dominate, to explain, to define. But when it stands before her, this woman who moves with soul, it loses all the words it thought it possessed. And, in place of control, vertigo emerges. The discomfort of being naked before something it cannot possess. Because she does not belong, she transits. She does not hold, she passes. And in the wake of her silence, it feels the call to feel again, to relearn how to look, to perceive the invisible. She is a body, but she is more than that. She is the memory of all that was repressed. She is the presence of the feminine that was silenced for centuries, now returning to express itself not with screams, but with gestures. Modern man, full of fragile certainties, does not realize that he is being touched not by a woman, but by a force greater than himself. The archetype of the sacred feminine, manifest in every curve, in every pause, in every breath of this woman who does not even need to open her mouth to transform him. And the transformation doesn't come as a lesson, it comes as a shock. A silent earthquake that shatters the structures he's built to protect himself. And it's in this shock that he begins to remember. Memories that aren't his, but that hurt as if they were. The childhood of a distant mother. The absence of genuine affection. The constant search for a woman who surrenders and, at the same time, challenges. The projection of the ideal, the frustration of reality. All of this begins to boil inside him as he watches her move. Because she forces him to look within. She doesn't seduce to be chosen. She reveals what he never wanted to see. And this, paradoxically, is what holds him captive. Not her body, not her face, not her voice, but the feeling that she has something that was taken from him, and that he never knew how to recover. And you, Watching. How many times have you felt this without knowing how to name it? How many times has a simple presence left you unsettled? Feeling inside, without understanding why. Don't run from the feeling. Immerse yourself in it. Because this kind of woman doesn't appear to be deciphered. She appears to deprogram you. To remind you of something that reason has forgotten, but that instinct still holds. And if you've ever encountered a woman like this, or if you are this woman, tell me in the comments. Not to expose, but to share. Because what's left unsaid is sometimes what transforms the most. She doesn't rush to reveal herself. There's a pause in her, a different rhythm, as if she were in another time, an internal time, unbowed by the urgency of the world. Her gaze doesn't shout, but invites. It doesn't reveal, but suggests. There's a kind of invisible veil between her and the other, and this veil isn't a barrier, but a field of mystery. He doesn't know what exactly attracts him to her. It's not her obvious beauty, nor her forced friendliness, nor her immediate accessibility. It's the not knowing. It's the space left blank. It's the silence where he expected noise. And this silence forces him to imagine. He tries to decipher her, but each attempt only takes him further away. Because the secret she carries isn't hidden, but unsaid. It's a kind of presence that activates in him the archetype of the unknown, of the profound feminine, of what escapes control. And the more he tries to name it, the more she escapes. Not out of malice, but by essence. She isn't there to be understood. She is the question, not the answer. And in this subtle inversion, the man finds himself exposed. It's not she who undresses, it's he who finds himself naked, faced with something he doesn't know how to contain. He doesn't understand, but he feels. And that's enough for his unconscious to bow in reverence. This woman, by keeping her secret, protects not only herself, but also the sacredness of mystery. She reminds him that not everything should be revealed, that there is value in the unsaid, that the invisible also communicates. She is the symbol of the depth that both frightens and attracts. Her presence summons him to delve into himself, to traverse inner layers he's avoided for years. Because what she awakens isn't just desire, it's memory. An ancestral memory, laden with symbols, losses, unresolved searches. And in the midst of this abyss, without her saying a single word, he understands there are questions that haven't been asked, and that perhaps only she can provoke. She listens with her entire body. Her eyes don't just look, they contain. A rare kind of silence emanates from her, not an empty silence, but one that welcomes, sustains, allows. When she's present, time slows down. He feels he can exist without defending himself. And this disconcerts him. Because he's accustomed to interactions where he needs to prove himself, argue, conquer. With her, there are no demands. There's space. And in that space, he disarms himself without realizing it. He speaks more than he'd like, reveals more than he understands, surrenders himself without being called upon. She doesn't need to fill the air with words to touch him deeply. It's the attention she offers that speaks. A deep, clear attention that doesn't wait its turn to respond, but truly listens. Not with its ears, with its heart. And in this listening, she reveals something rare, the ability to see beyond what is said. She hears what he keeps silent. She perceives the tone, the gesture, the pause. And he, in the face of this, feels seen in a way he didn't know was possible. Not as a strong man, nor as a social role, but as a soul. And this is so rare, so unexpected, that the effect is immediate. He doesn't know whether to love, fear, or flee. But he feels, and feels deeply. The woman who listens with her body doesn't just understand. She translates. She transforms his inner chaos into a shared presence. And in this silent process, she becomes a mirror and a refuge. He, who so often spoke without being heard, now finds himself welcomed without needing to ask. And this touches him in an ancient, dormant place, where the boy who only wanted to be understood still resides. The connection she proposes has no logic, no script. It is visceral, ancestral. And perhaps that's why he doesn't know how to deal with it. Because no armor can withstand true listening. And before this woman, even his silence confesses. She doesn't try to be sweet. She doesn't need to soften her essence to please. There is a raw, almost indomitable force within her, one that doesn't scream, but vibrates. A woman who is nature in its purest form, untamed by social conventions, nor molded by the expectations of the outside world. She breathes autonomously, moves instinctively, feels with a wholeness that both frightens and fascinates. The man who approaches her realizes, even without understanding, that he is before something sacred, not because of what she offers, but because of what she sustains. She doesn't adapt. She is. This woman doesn't hide her shadows or disguise her lights. She lives in full integration with what is most authentic. Her cycles are part of her identity. Her emotions are uncensored. Her sensitivity is wild. And it is precisely this raw truth that disarms the male unconscious. He was hounded, he's determined to find the feminine as a reflection of his needs. But there's something different. A woman who doesn't bow down, who doesn't need him to feel alive. And at the same time, she embraces him, not out of submission, but by choice. And that changes everything. Because where there was once dominance, now there's respect. Where there was control, now there's surrender. She's the reminder that life pulses outside the bars, outside the scripts. And before her he feels. He feels fear and desire. He feels insecurity and fascination. Because she evokes in him what has been silenced, the desire to belong to the real, not the ideal. And the real, with her, is made of instinct, of depth, of unedited truth. This woman doesn't belong to the world of filters. She belongs to the earth, to the flesh, to the invisible that lives between things. And by touching him without words, she calls him back to himself. Not with promises, but with presence. Not with plans, but with a pulse. She doesn't hold him back. But once he feels her, it's impossible to forget her. She seems to be in two worlds at once. There's something in her eyes that doesn't belong to the present, as if she sees dimensions most ignore. She perceives signs others would call coincidence, senses subtle shifts in the air, intuits the truth before it reveals itself. It's as if she's dancing with the invisible, in a rhythm heard not with the ears, but with the soul. And the man who crosses her path senses this before he can even rationalize. There's a silent magnetism about her, not through effort, but through attunement. She doesn't seek to understand, she senses. And by sensing, she's already one step ahead of everything superficial. This woman disconcerts him because she sees through the masks. She doesn't point, she doesn't judge, but perceives. Her sensitivity isn't fragility, it's radar. And this disarms him, because there's no effective shield against someone who feels beyond form. He finds himself avoiding her gaze, not out of contempt, but out of fear of being seen where he himself dares not look. There is wisdom in her silence, a kind of ancient knowledge not learned from books, but lived in the flesh, in pain, in the journey. When she is near, the world seems more alive. Not because she illuminates everything, but because she reveals where it is dark. She doesn't touch him physically, but something in him stirs. She is the kind of woman who, even when quiet, provokes an internal earthquake. Her presence activates the deepest layers of the unconscious. He feels she holds something sacred, not an answer, but a portal, an invitation to mystery. And as much as he tries to maintain control, there is something in him that leans in, that opens, that surrenders. Because, deep down, he knows, she didn't come to complete. She came to awaken. And what she awakens is precisely what he spent his life trying to numb. She doesn't mold herself to be accepted. She doesn't seek approval, nor external validation. There's a quiet firmness about her, as if every cell in her body knows exactly who she is, and isn't willing to trade that essence for applause or promises. She doesn't compete, doesn't beg, doesn't diminish herself. Her posture is complete, not as if she's defiant, but as if she simply doesn't need to bow. And it's precisely this lack of need that makes her irresistibly magnetic. The man who approaches her immediately senses that he's in the presence of someone who isn't for sale. And what can't be bought awakens genuine desire. She doesn't fit the mold society has imposed on femininity. She doesn't live to be chosen. She chooses. And this inverts something deep in the male unconscious, which for centuries has been programmed to conquer and possess. With her, this game loses its meaning. Not because she rejects him, but because she doesn't need him to feel complete. She can love, surrender, and engage, but always from a place of freedom. And this freedom is frightening. Because where before he could control, now he must earn it. And merit here doesn't come from strength, status, or rhetoric, but from real presence. He only connects with her when he stops performing and begins to be. A woman who doesn't seek approval touches a man where he's most vulnerable, in his hidden insecurity. By not depending on his gaze to exist, she invites him to look at himself without artifice. She makes him wonder what he truly has to offer beyond rehearsed seduction, inflated ego, and the facade of control. Because before her, everything false crumbles. And that's where the possibility of something real begins. She doesn't challenge him to conquer him, she confronts him to free him. And in this freedom, he discovers that love isn't where one conquers someone, but where one can rest in one's entirety. She doesn't need exaggerated gestures or provocative clothing to be noticed. There's a quiet eroticism in her presence, a subtle vibration that runs through the air like an invisible electric current. She awakens desire not because she tries to seduce, but because she lives in full connection with her own vital energy. Your body is a temple and, at the same time, a territory where mystery dwells. And it is this rare combination of strength and surrender, of subtlety and intensity, that unsettles the man. He doesn't know what exactly attracts him, but he feels it. He feels that she carries something that instinctively recognizes as essential, almost sacred. She doesn't offer easy access. Not because she protects herself, but because she preserves herself. Her every gesture seems charged with intention, as if time were not only lived, but honored. There is wisdom in how she occupies her own body, as if every part of her were awake, conscious, alive. The masculine who encounters this energy enters a state of alertness and enchantment at the same time. He realizes he is faced with something that cannot be reduced to carnal desire. What she evokes is a primal memory of the fusion between body and soul, pleasure and meaning, presence and transcendence. And this captivates him, not by instinct, but by a soul hungry for depth. The most disturbing thing is that she doesn't say. She offers no explanations, no justifications. She simply is. And in being, she evokes in him what was dormant, the longing for an encounter that goes beyond touch, beyond appearance, beyond the fleeting. She ignites in him the memory that true desire is born of mystery, of pause, of the unsaid. And in this silence charged with meaning, he finds himself surrendered, vulnerable, enchanted. Because she doesn't invite him to possess her, but to feel her. And in this feeling, he is forced to delve into himself. Not to have her, but to perhaps finally find himself. She has already gone through her own hell and returned with different eyes. They are no longer eyes that seek salvation, but those that embrace their own darkness without shame. This woman doesn't deny her failures, doesn't hide her cracks, doesn't try to appear perfect. She knows herself. And in this raw knowledge, there is a fierce beauty that no emotional makeup can simulate. The man who approaches her feels, even without understanding, that he is before someone who has already bled where he still avoids looking. And that is what unsettles him. Because she doesn't demand strength from him, but truth. She doesn't demand masks, she summons wholeness. Her depth isn't theoretical. She's lived what she speaks, felt what she carries, faced what most deny. And this experience gives her presence a silent density that cannot be ignored. When she enters a space, she brings with her everything she's survived. Not to victimize herself, but to remember that being whole is more precious than being intact. And the masculine, touching her, realizes he's standing before an uncomfortable mirror. Because where he feigns control, she offers truth. Where he still hides, she has already healed. She doesn't need to prove emotional maturity. She emanates. And in this contrast, he sees himself as small. Not out of inferiority, but out of recognition of how far he still has to go. This woman isn't looking for security, applause, or superficial stability. She wants real presence, an available soul, the courage to feel. She doesn't want him to save her. She wants him to take responsibility for himself. And this implicit invitation, so unconventional, can be both frightening and awakening. Because those willing to look at their own shadows find in her a rare partner. But those still trapped in the ideal of the docile and predictable woman run the risk of becoming unbearable. She doesn't want a perfect man. She wants a man who is present. One who knows that loving someone who has already gone through his own night is, in fact, a call to escape his own illusion. Her presence doesn't dissolve when our eyes move away. On the contrary, it remains like a subtle echo that resonates in the depths of inner silence. It's as if her existence were an invisible mark, a luminous shadow that persists beyond space and time, calling for a rediscovery of oneself. The mystery she carries doesn't end. It simply transforms into a gentle restlessness, an invitation for each of us to excavate our own unconscious and discover what has been hidden beneath the layers of everyday life. The silence she leaves is, in fact, a sacred space where true dialogue begins. Not with the other, but within ourselves. The image of this woman who doesn't speak, but speaks too much, is a bridge between worlds. The visible and the invisible, the conscious and the unconscious, fear and desire. By facing her, man finds himself stripped of the armor and masks he has constructed, and discovers an unknown terrain, his own vulnerability. It is in this terrain that the possibility of transformation resides, because only those who allow themselves to inhabit the uncertain can access the truths that cannot be contained in words. And this silent revelation is also a mirror of life. Everything that truly matters happens between the unsaid and the deepest meaning, where the soul recognizes itself and frees itself. And if, for a moment, you allow this echo to penetrate, you may feel that the search is not for ready-made answers, but for questions you have not yet dared to ask. The woman who awakens without speaking is not a riddle to be deciphered. Not a prey, but a presence to be felt, a mystery to be experienced. It offers no promises, but reveals paths. And these paths are unique to each person who encounters its energy. An invitation to abandon the mechanical script and dance with the unknown, with one's own shadow, and with a light that insists on shining even in the shadows. If this encounter touched something within you, don't let that seed die in silence. Like, share, comment on your experiences and sensations, and subscribe to continue on this journey of discovery that goes beyond what meets the eye. Because here, every gesture is a conscious choice to delve into mystery, to embrace the invisible, to make silence a powerful language. It's not just a channel. It's a space where the invisible finds a voice, and you are part of this never-ending conversation.